This week, I'm taking on a controversial topic: gun violence and the link with mental illness. First of all, I want to preface that this is not a discussion about gun control or gun rights. This is not political. I don't delve into the political debate on this channel. I have my beliefs on that subject, and I will not dip my toes into the water for that. What has me fired up this week is an article that I read in USA Today related to the recent Boulder shooting incident. The article's focus is on how experts say mental illness is rarely the cause of mass shootings. In this article, the reporter Ryan Miller tries to state that we should not jump to conclusions and claim that mental illness is a cause for gun violence and mass shootings. He provides a quote from Jonathan Metzl from Vanderbilt University, who states, "There's no psychotic illness whose symptom is shooting other people." Miller offers an additional quote from Angela Kimball, who is the National Director of Public Policy at National Alliance on Mental Illness. It states, "People are searching for explanations for behavior they don't understand. It's easy to put a label like mental illness on behavior that frankly seems just beyond the pale." First of all, we need to take a moment and discuss the definition of mental illness. Now, definition is always in the eye of the beholder. I decided to pull from a commonly acceptable source. The American Psychiatric Association website defines mental illness as health conditions involving changes in emotion, thinking, or behavior, or a combination of these. Mental illnesses are associated with distress and or problems functioning in social, work, or family activities. Based on this definition, let's explore some of the signs of mental illness. Now, what's interesting is I pulled this list of signs from the National Alliance on Mental Illness website. Some of the signs include excessive worrying or fear, feeling excessively sad or low, extreme mood changes, including uncontrollable highs or feelings of euphoria, prolonged or strong feelings of irritability or anger, avoiding friends and social activities, difficulty understanding or relating to other people, difficulty perceiving reality, inability to perceive changes in one's own feelings, behavior, or personality, thinking about suicide, inability to carry out daily activities or handle daily problems and stress. Granted, I concede that nowhere in this list does it say shooting people is a sign. But, honestly, can anyone with a logical enough mind look at this list and say that a person who suddenly decides to shoot people at a grocery store, school, office, or anywhere innocent civilians are is perfectly sane? No sane individual wakes up one morning and decides it's okay to commit such a despicable act of violence. Somewhere along the way, that individual has experienced one or several of these signs that create a question about their mental health, even if it is temporary. Miller continues in his article about why mental illness is immediately thought to be the cause, arguing that the true causes are more complicated and not fully understood. He provides a quote from Paul, I'm going to butcher this, Gianfrido, who is president and CEO of Mental Health America, saying, "For people to use those weapons in that way, something else has to happen. Plenty of people are walking around with serious mental illness, never having had a single violent thought." I agree that not everyone who suffers from mental illness has violent thoughts. But this does not remove mental illness from the equation. Mentally ill patients experience the highest gun violence rate in the form of suicide. According to the Giffords.com website, the Centers for Disease Control says that suicides in 2019 account for 60% of gun violence deaths. Remember, suicidal thoughts is a clear sign of mental illness. I would like to see Miller tried to argue that we shouldn't jump to conclusions that mental illness had nothing to do with suicides here. Later in his report, Miller says people don't just, quote, have a bad day. He adds that the FBI finds in 77% of gun violence cases the attack was planned for at least a week, causing further doubt on the theory that shooters simply, quote, snap. How does this change anything? How does this make mental illness not the cause? Are they trying to claim that someone with mental illness only makes a snap decision to commit gun violence against innocent people? It makes no difference if the person plans it for an hour or a year. Somewhere along the line, the person's normal decision-making process in the brain has broken down. The rational goes away and the irrational takes over. Mental illness can be short or long-term. There is no set time frame for how long someone has it. Finally, Miller claims that the mental illness narrative stigmatizes people experiencing mental illness. Miller references Angela Kimball again from the National Alliance on Mental Illness, stating, "When people unfairly connect mass shooters with mental illness, it stigmatizes the millions of people living with mental health struggles who are not violent." Miller then quotes Kimball, "When they hear people falsely associate mental illness with a mass shooting, people tend to feel a kind of dread of this being associated with a condition that they may be living with every day of their lives," she said. As someone who has had to deal with mental illness throughout my life, I am not offended by the fact that mental illness is linked to gun violence, nor do I feel dread, as Ms. Kimball states. In fact, when I went through my last depression, I understood the risks of having my own guns in the home while having suicidal thoughts. I made arrangements for someone else to hold on to my guns during that time. For Ms. Kimball to state that associating mental illness with a mass shooting is false is an irresponsible statement. I can't understand how someone who speaks for an organization helping people with mental illness can simply dismiss the argument. Anyone who decides to harm another person with a weapon of any kind, whether it be a gun, knife, or a bomb, is suffering from some sort of mental illness. No sane individual simply wakes up and decides to harm someone that day unless something traumatic has happened inside the brain. I don't see linking gun violence to mental illness as an excuse either to avoid more difficult debates on gun control or gun violence. In fact, I think linking the two should create a deeper conversation of why people reach the point where they feel this is necessary to commit these acts. Somewhere, that person felt they had a justification in their head. Something led them to that point. We need to study more about why people feel in this modern time that this is the answer, because it most certainly is not. Mass shootings, or even suicide for that matter, are not going to solve anything. I've said it many times on this channel. This country suffers from one of the largest mental health crises ever. To simply turn our focus to something else as a cause of violence is irresponsible. I call on our leaders to focus on the right things, work on the core of the problem instead of solving the symptoms and the signs. Let's target mental health treatment. The time to act is now. Thank you for watching this episode this week. Comment below. Tell me what your thoughts are on this topic. I would love to hear what you think about it. Make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell down below. We'll talk to you next week in the next episode, and take care.